Yes, the Twins are being picked by just about everyone to repeat as AL Central champions. And yes, it's Dave Brown and my contention that the Twins are still being underrated. So we'll dig into that right now. This is Locked On Twins.
You are Locked On Twins, your daily Minnesota Twins podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello again, and welcome back to Locked On Twins. I'm your host, Brandon Warren, and you can unfollow me on Twitter at Brandon_WARNE. Thanks for hanging out with us. Joining me, as usual, Mr. Dave Brown at Answer Dave Brown in the tweets. Good evening. How are we doing?
Brandon, we're doing just great, like the Twins. Although I don't know if they won today, but I know Bailey Ober pitched well.
They did not, but Jordan Balazovic happened. So we'll talk about him a little bit today because the results were not particularly great. But there was a lot of fun stuff to kind of look at here in the last few days. A short little reprieve for you and I. I went to the zoo yesterday, and so I was absolutely shot.
Some kind of reprieve. Boy, that's a lot of work.
Yeah, right. Exactly. And so, yeah, anyway, thanks for making Locked On Twins your first listen every day. We're free, and you can find us wherever you get your podcasts, like every podcast platform you can imagine. Give us 5 stars on Apple. Give us 5 stars on Spotify. Click like, subscribe, all that fun stuff on YouTube. We'd love to hear from you, too, if you want to chat with us. The live chat is especially fun, but you can also chat after the shows are done as well, and we'd love to hear from you either way. Today's episode brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. New customers join today, and you'll get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet of $5 or more wins. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. All right, Dave. I do want to talk about how the Twins are being slept on, which sounds weird because they're almost universally expected to win the division. But we'll talk about that in a little while here. First of all, today, Bailey Ober, or as I say today, Saturday, Bailey Ober came out looking absolutely nasty, and we'll talk about that. I want to say this, though, Dave. Excuse me. For spring training, and the Twins actually helped me out with this based on how their nature is. I really try to not watch any of the games because I don't want my vision clouded by what I see in small sample sizes in beautiful weather against guys with last names like Lingenfelter-Schmidt or something like that. So
his name is my name too.
Yep. I actually thought John J, Cub, Jingleheimer Candelario could have been a kind of a funny joke. Kind of reminds me of who is that? Oh, there was a person on Twitter for a very brief time who was doing music as player pages on Baseball Reference. Do you remember this?
It's not coming to me yet.
Don Zemmer. That's the name of the. I knew it was an offshoot of a baseball name.
Yeah,
and so like.
And what was the trick, the gimmick?
They would do music like songs, but they would use Baseball Reference player pages to do them. So like, that's where John J, Cub, Jingleheimer Candelario would come from, something dumb like that. So, but then it hasn't happened recently. I don't know if that account got clapped. No disrespect to you, but
I know that's been going around.
Yep, gotta
the clapped.
Yeah, gotta take care of it. But yeah, I thought that was really really funny. I don't want to though have my vision or my thoughts clouded by things I see in small sample sizes. So I listen and I do a lot of box score watching, but not so much the TV. And like I said, the Twins bail me out because they only televise like 4 games all spring, which one really gets you eager and antsy and agitated and all at once for ball games on TV. But it also helps that I don't have to lay my eyes on them unless I'm actually there in Fort Myers, which I've only done once.
Well, it's tricky to take results from spring training and get any valuable information from them for a big picture, or because, like we've kind of said before, you never know when guys are working on something, and that goes for hitters too, and not just
Yeah.
pitchers. Um, but today with Ober, with his movement and his accelerated speed by a little bit, it caught the eye of Bryce Harper, the Phillies slugger, and there's a good video clip on MLB.com of Harper singing Ober's praises, and basically the too long didn't read is if he's throwing 95 or 96 miles an hour, good luck to the rest of the teams in the AL Central because his stuff is nasty. So, if you read a little bit about the context of that, he probably had an uptick last year too in his spring velocity at some point, but and he had a fine season. But I
Yep.
think you can look at it like this: it's another season of development. He knows what he's doing a little bit more than he used to. So even if he doesn't throw terribly harder in the end, if he loses some of that velocity once the regular season gets going, it's reasonable to expect that Ober is going to be improved at least some on his results from a year ago, just because of experience and knowing what to do.
Couple things though that I noticed. So not only velo up 2.3 miles per hour on average. Now again, a lot of noise in that. It's spring. Last year's velo was up. It's early in terms of either you might be ramping up or you might be ramped up. Like pitchers are going to be on different levels.
Right.
And guys like Joe Nathan would show up throwing 86. And by the end of spring, it was 93, 94, which back then was actually pretty. That would trip the trigger of the Fox gun with the fire at like 94,
Fire,
95.
yeah.
And now it's not even anything you get excited about. But Ober at 94.8 for a max, 2 added inches, or sorry, 3 of basically vertical break. So the perception of rise, which he had plenty of to begin with, but that's got to do numbers on you mentally as a hitter because it's a tall guy throwing pitches that still kind of seem to rise. And then not only that, but 11 swinging strikes in 38 pitches. So what does that come out to? About 25% or more than double what you would really like to see. And 6 of those whiffs on the 4-seam fastball. Now, again, that shows how you can kind of elevate or create the perception of elevation. But 6 whiffs, 12 swings on 17 fastballs. Like, that's incredible.
It's really encouraging. It's I think you're wise. I don't know if I would go to the extreme, like you said, that you don't watch or don't want to.
I'm definitely cropping out where you said I was wise as like a soundbite.
Oh, all right. Well, you do what you got to do, Brandon.
Yeah.
But you would, your thoughts about not paying any attention to spring training. I understand, the video and all that. Why you don't want to get too excited about little snippets. So I think it's good to kind of keep that in mind. But at the same time, it's when you're, and Harper said, if you listen to the entire Harper quote, he's like, he's been having trouble catching up to fastballs. So even though Ober was able to put a little extra mustard on it, Harper kind of is like, well, I got to get myself right with fastballs because I've been struggling to hit them. So take that into consideration too. There's just so much, we don't want to like jump to conclusions, but we can like nudge ourselves a little bit, take a half step and say, well, this is looking pretty good for Mr. Ober.
I think if I was Bryce Harper, I'd want to tell people I was struggling with fastballs too, wink, wink, wink. Because
Sure. Don't hate me. Don't throw snowballs at me like Santa.
Exactly. I have a very soft spot in my heart for Harper because the first piece of sports memorabilia or anything that I bought for any of my children was a Bryce Harper jersey for our daughter to wear in pictures when she was born. Her name's Harper. And so it's an old Nationals jersey. It's obviously doesn't fit her anymore. I think it was for like a 1-year-old. So she was swimming in it. But yeah, we'll always keep that as kind of a fun little memento. Let's take a quick second.
I'm sure preferable to the Fantastics uniforms of today.
Fantastics. Nice. Not so fantastics. Let's take a second. We'll talk about FanDuel. We come back. We have a wide open discussion on a few other things from spring training. One more pitcher out there that I think maybe we're sleeping on who the Twins should, I still think, show interest in. And I don't know. We'll talk about why we think the Twins are still underrated. FanDuel. You can get buckets with your first bet on FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. Because right now, new customers are getting $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. So if you're anything like me and you are watching the Lakers play tonight and they're not looking, or they are looking pretty good, but not looking so great this season. So if you are a big Laker fan and they're playing, you can, as a new customer, get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. So if you got the Lakers over the Nuggets or something like that, that's your way to go. That's $150 if your bet wins. Bet on all your favorite NBA players and teams. And they have so many options. There's quick bets, live same-game parlays, exclusive props, and about a million other things that I couldn't possibly get to in the time that we have allotted. So again, you really got to check it out for yourself. Go to FanDuel.com/lockedon and shoot your shot. Once you're in, you can check out the app. It's incredible, wall-to-wall sports options for you to get into the game. But again, visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and shoot your shot. $150 in bonus bets, basically free play with a winning $5 bet. FanDuel is an official sportsbook partner of the NBA. All right, Dave, a couple other things I was watching from Saturday's action. Jorge Alcala, who really does not have a clear path in this bullpen, or really any path at all, at least until something happens, because inevitably, invariably, it always does. But touched 98.9 with his four-seam fastball. He did throw one sinker, 97.9, so 98 functionally 99 for his four-seam fastball. All up. Now, granted, he was dealing with some stuff last year health-wise, and so but still, if you are sitting at 98, 99, no matter where you were before, that's still pretty impressive. We talked about something like 25 or 30 different relievers that could make this team at some point this season and be interesting. But let's not sleep on guys who are right under our nose, and Alcala and, a couple other guys like that. That was an impressive showing today.
Yeah, he's a guy that, 4 years ago kind of thought, well, he's going to have a chance to come up and be something. And for one reason or another, injuries or bad performance or bad timing or whatever, it just kind of hasn't happened. But I saw somebody make a good point. One of our esteemed Twitter followers say, it's might have been Masterson, who said that, the Twins have a heck of an advantage because they have a few guys like Alcala who are major league ready and talented, and if they have everything going, they can just kind of call them from St. Paul and have them join up, and you're not throwing an egg beater out there. I don't even know if that's a term, but it's an advantage to have such a deep bullpen that goes all the way, more guys than you need. We've talked about signing Jay Jackson before, and seemingly having more than you need, but it's such a long season and stuff happens, not even like long-term stuff, but stuff for a few weeks where a guy gets hurt or you have to shut him down. And you have guys like this. He's got options. We should point that out. He's free to come back and forth. And it's just one of those things that can be huge in a baseball season when you have competent relief pitchers that you can call on to fill up holes, short or long term.
You can steal a line from an old commercial. You are now free to move about the Twin Cities, which is basically you can ride that light rail, although I don't think they're riding the light rail to and from, but it's an option. Daniel Duarte, who cleared waivers and is in I wouldn't say similar boat as Alcala, because again, off the 40, so it will take a little bit of finagling to get him on there. But 6 swinging strikes on 17 pitches today. Peaked at 96.1 with his four-seam fastball. The cutter got 3 swings, 3 misses on 6 pitches. So if that's going to be his predominant pitch, which it was on this day, that's interesting because cutter's not typically swing and miss pitches. Obviously there's Mariano Rivera, who we all look back upon fondly or not fondly, depending on who you were rooting for that day. But again, it just again speaks to the depth that we talk about, not only in this bullpen, but organizationally for players near major league ready.
Ideally, I think teams settle on guys who can get strikeouts because it's the path of least resistance, and you don't, uh, you know, the guy not hitting the batter not hitting the ball is the best way to get him out.
Yep.
But there's more than one way to skin a cat. You don't have to, and I don't mean that literally. So don't come after me. I love cats, but figuratively speaking, if you throw a cutter, a lot of times, Mark Burley with the White Sox threw a cutter too, and he wasn't a huge strike. He got strikeouts, but it was for soft contact. It was for letting your defense do the work. It was for not giving up home runs to opposite-handed hitters. There's lots of ways to get guys out. So if you have a successful cutter, uh, that's going to mess with a hitter's timing, and that's going to be good for having another depth guy to come in and not give the store away while somebody else is out. So it's a good sign for sure.
Feels like a cutter is a staple for a lefty who doesn't hit 92 miles per hour. Is something that gets in on a guy's hands, but has a little deception so that when they read it, they
Right.
have to adjust, and then you get that weak contact. Couple other reliever types. Ronnie Enriquez, velo way up after a lost season. That's interesting to see. But more importantly, or at least more notably to me, Jordan Balazovic, velo down considerably. Not a good outing today. And I saw someone say, I'm seeing why he cleared waivers, which whatever. I don't know if that's really fair to make off a handful of pitches, but it obviously doesn't portend, not pretend, but portend well for him making any sort of addition to this bullpen early in the season. But again, we'll keep an eye on that. Any thoughts on those two guys?
Well, with Balazovic, it maybe is a little bit of a cheap shot to say, well, that's why he didn't clear waivers, but maybe it had something to do with, uh, you know, uh, velocity or movement toward the end of last season when teams are scouting, and it just wasn't impressive to them. So maybe there is a longer term issue here that I don't know if it's an injury, but if it's something that the Twins kind of have to take back to the drawing board, that's one of the reasons they pay the development department to kind of keep on these sort of things. So and it just goes to show you when a guy goes from a 40-man roster dude to passing through waivers, how cyclical and how fleeting this can all be. And the more arms you have, the better that you can trust, the better chances you're going to have of getting through a season.
Yeah, no question about that. Pitcher who has not signed yet, who I'm looking at again and kind of wondering about. A few days ago, the Mets were sniffing around Michael Lorenzen. And I know the Twins are flush with depth in the bullpen, and I know their rotation's fairly sound as well. But what would you say to Lorenzen in the Jesse Chavez role, if he's capable of doing it? Lorenzen's best year, at least in terms of what I think is best, he in 2019, he made 73 appearances, no starts, spanning 83 and a third innings, more than a strikeout per inning, 3 walks per 9, less than a homer per 9, about a league average ground ball rate. It was a 2.92 ERA out of the bullpen and 1.3 Fangraphs WAR. If you could get him as a swingman, now again, I'm not saying I don't. Tony Disco is dealing with a shoulder or an elbow, not a shoulder, fortunately, and obviously Louis Varland could step in. Would it be foolish to say, hey, make some room for Lorenzen, and who knows, see what happens?
Well, I think, you mentioned DeSclafani, or sometimes I call him Anthony Gwen Stefani
Yep.
when I just want to be
Okay.
stupid and
Okay,
silly.
Boomer. Okay, and I mean that by Chris Berman, not your
Well,
person that's much older than me.
either one of those aren't really flattering. But
We caught him. Dave is undergoing a quick coughing spell, so we'll give him some.
if you've been listening to the show for a while, you've known that I have a cough that won't die, and it's getting better, but uh, it's just a flesh wound. It's getting
Yeah,
better.
tis merely a flesh wound.
DeSclafani, if I think they're okay. I think that's a guy you keep an eye on. If DeSclafani's elbow turns out to be more like the issue that he had last year, where it's going to be a longer thing, then you kind of see an opening. Um, there does come a point, not when you can have too much pitching, but when you have too many guys to fit on a roster. So I don't know that there would be an opening for disco at this time. And I
Yeah.
mean the person, not the dance. There's always time for disco dancing. Um,
Were
you know,
you
you keep them on the radar, but I don't think you don't put out an APB yet.
were you in Chicago during the disco demolition night?
I was 7.
No, I
Um,
knew you weren't very old. I just figured, were you in the city though?
well, I grew up in the suburbs,
Okay.
um, the northwest suburbs out by O'Hare Airport. But I remember disco demolition because my mom loved to go disco dancing. She went to the clubs,
The
and
discotheque, if you will?
she did. And I remember I would stay at my grandparents and
Nice.
sleep over in Homewood. So it was like South Side stuff. She went to Mel Marcon's. Nobody knows these places, but that was a place that she went in
Yeah.
the South suburbs. I remember though the White Sox forfeiting the second game of a doubleheader because of disco demolition, and I really disliked the perpetrators of that, which included for a time the owner's son, Mike Beck, um, who I was very much against these guys because they made the White Sox, who were bad anyway, lose a game, and it really upset me. And they lost many more games that year, but I was really upset at the anti-disco people because of that. So that's my story.
Did you know Mike Vick was involved with the St. Paul Saints?
I did. I knew that, and I've also seen the wonderful Netflix biography
I
on
haven't
Mike
seen that
Beck.
yet.
Oh my God, you have to. I
I
mean,
will.
it's just, and it's very heartbreaking. He had a daughter who got sick and did not live beyond her 20s very much, and he was kind of sort of setting her up as like the next generation of maybe baseball owners, and it didn't in the family after Bill and himself, and it's mostly a great celebration of his life. They do address disco demolition, and he felt bad that some people, uh, you know, associated it with like anti gay and anti black feelings. And he's like, I understand how that wasn't the intention, but I understand how people got that feeling. It was kind of, it was mostly like, uh, you know, uh, certain kind of people getting upset at disco music who weren't in the demographic, if you will. So, but I wasn't thinking about that kind of stuff when I was 7. I was just mad that the White Sox had been made to forfeit a game.
That sounds like kind of the angle I would have had when I was that age watching
Yeah.
ball. Boy, this has taken a turn, hasn't it?
It has a turn of the turntable, if you will.
Hopefully, disco demolition night doesn't take place at Target Field on the mound because, again, as you and I have both said, like it would make a lot of sense for them to add another starter. And I don't know, like to me, the reason Lorenzen seems more likely is like threefold. He would be obviously at his price range more of a fit in both roles.
Yeah.
But also, so he's gonna be cheaper. He's gonna have more of a fit, but like they're not gonna have to displace anyone obvious. Well, actually, no, based on their depth, they will. I guess it's just like, I don't know. I mean, maybe take a flyer. Maybe he's this year's Donovan Solano signing. You know what I mean? Like, oh, we don't think this guy's gonna do that much for us, and then all of a sudden, he wins
They
14 games and have a 4 ERA and is your fifth starter.
they are limited in how many pitchers they can carry, and they kind of tweak that rule a little bit so you can have only so many. So
Yep.
there's that, and I think the next like semi-significant pitcher they add is going to be somebody who's better than that. No offense, he's thrown a no hitter, I know, but mostly his second half last year is kind of whatever. Uh, after being trying to build up to be a starter, so I think let's just hold the fort with Disco and see how that goes.
It's kind of crazy though that Ronaldo Lopez signed as a starter and Lorenzen can't find work.
Well, yeah, I suppose. I mean, Ronaldo Lopez was a pretty good prospect, and
Oh yeah,
um,
yeah.
uh, I mean, I'm kind of surprised the Braves are going that way too, and I don't know if that's going to work. But honestly, having watched him with the White Sox, but um, Yeah, it is. I mean, it is surprising that Lorenzen can't get work. There's several pitchers out there that it doesn't really make sense that they're out of work considering how much we need pitching. We, the collective community of MLB.
I want to tease to our next episode because my intention was to go down this path in this episode, where there's not going to be enough time. Every time I actually tweeted this the other day, every time I think about the good players the Twins have, every time I do it, I keep forgetting one. Like the other day, it was Edward Julian. Like I was thinking about the day that Royce, Buxton, and Correa all played in the same lineup, all hit 1, 2, 3, or extras 2, 3, 4. And I was just like, man, that's a great core. And you can't forget about Max Kepler, who's been there forever and all that. And then I was like, I completely forgot about Edouard Julien. The depth that they can throw at you. And again, I want to do a full episode on why you and I think that they're underrating the Twins this year. But yeah, I mean, they can come at you with depth, and more depth. And that's, I think, why they're so, even though the projections are 86, 88, but winning the division, I think they could sneakily run away with this division with, like, as you said, 94, 96 wins.
Yeah, I think so too. Part of I think why maybe the feeling about the Twins isn't strong, but the feeling about them winning the division is a little stronger than the
Mhm.
Twins themselves, is because of kind of a understanding that the rest of the division isn't very good right now, and that's not really the fault of the Twins, but I think that's kind of half of why people have them as favorites. Well, it doesn't look like anybody's really going to challenge them. And, sometimes baseball can surprise you, but I kind of agree with that sentiment that if they are challenged, it's maybe for a while, but in the end, the depth will prevail. And, I don't want to spoil, since we kind of teased that we would talk about that. Let's talk about that in the next episode a little bit more about why we think that the Twins people are still kind of sleeping on the Twins, even if they expect them to win.
Well, I think what's nice about your perspective too is you're like the Twins Switzerland, where you haven't been beaten down, you've been neutral toward the Twins, or maybe even against them, I guess, at points in your life. But you don't have the emotional baggage that Twins fans have, where, like the Timberwolves, if you watch the Minnesota Timberwolves, they're coming off a loss, but it was against a really good team. And there's still that emotional, like, oh, here we go again. This team can't possibly do anything right because it's Minnesota. Meanwhile, every team that wins something has a tough spell usually, or, like, it's really hard to win in the league. And I think Minnesota fans still kind of forget that, like, yeah, you may not win a title in the next 20 years, but that won't mean you won't have had great moments, great games, great seasons. And so it's kind of hard to balance those two. And that's what I like, is you can be like, I'm looking at this as an unbiased, neutral observer without that Minnesota baggage, and say, this is a good team. Are they better than last year? We'll find out. And also too, like, a lot of people won't have the perspective of the Twins left so many opportunities at the plate in the first half, on the bases at times. This was a team that was way more talented than their record indicated last year. And so I think they could, just by definition of playing slightly better baseball results-wise, surprise a lot of people, even though they're predicted to be basically the consensus division champion.
Well, I think we've put it this way before. Even though the Twins last year won the division, lots of things went wrong or didn't go as right as they probably could have gone. And that, they got through most of last season with Carlos Correa being, he didn't turn it on until the playoffs. Royce Lewis didn't have a full season with them, and hitting all those grand slams and stuff. A lot of it, some of it came early, and then he got hurt, and came late again. So he wasn't there all year. Buxton was a shell of himself. This year, Plika gone, Buxton better. And you mentioned Julian, who gets overlooked sometimes. Got a great batting eye at the plate. There's lots of really good things going for this team. Kirilloff hasn't, and he might not, but Kirilloff hasn't reached his potential yet. Joe Ryan is a guy who, in the first half of the season, was the best version of himself so far. Had a lower body injury it hurt him toward the end. I think there's a full season of great in Joe Ryan, an all-star for two halves. Um,
Yep.
so that's just some of the reasons why I think they're in great shape. And I might carry some baggage, but I don't really have any Twins baggage. No. I wish I had the giant inflatable milk from the Metrodome. I would carry that around as Twins baggage, but
I
someone
think
else has it, or it's in the landfill. I don't know.
I think I put it in my front yard. Well, my yard's awfully small because we're in kind of a tight development, but they miscalculated the yardage. And so we
Uh-huh.
actually have a fairly large side of our yard. I could probably put it up there. I think I would do that.
I'd love it. If any of our listeners know where the giant milk is from the Metrodome, who has it, if we could just see it, maybe do some proof of life videos. I'd love to see that baby inflated again, like the old times.
Nobody's going to chop that up and use that against you. One of my favorite signs before we go, where we live, there was a liquor store off this highway, and it just had the largest sign I've ever seen that said the word beer. And I thought, you know what? Someday when they close that down, that'd be a fun sign to have. And now it's a motorcycle place, and they took the sign down, and I don't know what happened to it, but it's gigantic, like 60-foot sign. It would have
That's
been
good
awesome.
marketing right there. I mean, what else do you need to say, honestly?
Yeah, sells itself. Well, Dave, we didn't quite get to everything we hoped to, but that seems to be the story of the year for us. We'll come back here, we'll watch the tape, get better, and talk to you all about why we are both convinced that while people think the Twins are good, they're a lot better than people are giving them credit for.
I agree. And we can end it now. It's fine. We don't have to take it up to 32 minutes exactly.
Okay, well, that's it. That's a wrap. Thanks for hanging out with us on Locked On Twins. We really do appreciate you. Thanks, and we'll see you tomorrow night.